Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the iDive. This podcast bridges the knowledge gap between students and industry professionals by engaging in some meaningful conversations. Our questions come from students seeking to learn more about how to make the transition post-grad as seamless as possible. Today, we have Ahmed Nizami, a 2008 MI alumni from the iSchool. While studying his master's, Ahmed focused on information design, business architecture, and policy management. Ahmed is currently a senior product manager for Amazon. Prior to, he has experience working for Walmart Canada's e-commerce services, where he led the launch of online grocery, crucial to our current times with the pandemic today. Ahmed brings a great depth of experience to share with the team. He has also worked at Research in Motion, Brookshire and Company, and SAN Interactive. His experiential learning builds onto his educational background from the Schulich School of Business, York University, and the National University of Computer and Emerging Sciences. While at York U, Ahmed was president of the Pakistani Students Fund and selected as an emerging global leader by York International. With his incredible background, he brings a unique voice in sharing his knowledge here today. Ahmed, we thank you so much for your support and time in helping our student community learn from your stories and reflections. Episode 6 of the iDive podcast features Ahmed's journey beyond the iSchool. So, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Ahmed. Could you please introduce yourself and share your story about how you got to where you are today?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me at the iDive podcast. I'm honored to be here and share the little knowledge that I have. I'm, as you mentioned, I'm a senior product manager at Amazon, and my role really focuses on creating new technology in order to help associates in like the warehouses that Amazon owns to help pick your orders safely and efficiently, and then get them delivered to your house on time so you can enjoy whatever you've ordered from Amazon. So that's sort of my role, my current role. I guess I could share why I've chosen to be in this role a little bit, and sort of that will give you some background to it. I think product management itself is a little more than just delivering like technology or features or services. It's also being empathetic about the customers. It's about understanding your customers' actual problems and sort of turning them around into like product opportunities. So this whole journey from start to finish is not only just tech, data driven, but also has, emotions built into it. So, and that's something that I really love about this role in itself, is that product management takes into account like both the emotional part of technology as well as the data and the tech behind it.
All right. That really helps, and I love how you're emphasizing that element of human connection and human relationships. That's really kind of building onto that empathy element when it comes to your role. I do have a question about reflecting on your own interview experiences. I'm wondering if you could tie this in. How can students prepare themselves for interviews or co-ops, internships, practicums after graduating, and how can they really showcase that empathy and human connection in that interview?
Sure, that's a great question. I think the number one, there are a couple of different things. Obviously, it's not going to be everything, but I think the top few things that I would definitely recommend students to do is to research about the company that they're applying to, and the position itself. Like understanding the objectives, the mission statement of a company that you want to apply to, and understanding the culture at that company is really important when you're going in for an interview. Even when you're trying to write your cover letter, for example, like you want to be able to bridge the gap between your I would say cultural fit with the company's cultural fit, right? So you want to be able to showcase that, for example, if a company really values, innovation or thinking big, or if they value honesty. I mean, every company does, but if transparency, for example, you want to be able to relate to those, tenets of the company, because then it helps the company not only look at you from technical perspective that, okay, yeah, you've got the, the skill set that you have, but you're also a good cultural fit. So understanding, I think, more about the company itself, its vision, its mission statement, will definitely help students be better prepared for an interview. And then obviously researching about what the company has to offer, so that if you get asked about questions and how do you improve certain services and products, or so you are able to do that. Like I feel like way back in my career, sometimes I was not well prepared to answer these questions, but over time I figured out that the most important thing, or one of the most important things in an interview, was the whole cultural fit thing, and then use that as the mechanism to amplify my profile at the interview.
Oh, wow. I love how you talked about cultural fit and how important, crucial that is to you in terms of just finding that place that you're going to spend so much of your time after academia. Because I find that in school, you can go home and you can do your assignments, then you go to your class for a few days. But when you're outside in the real world, it's 40 hours a week. You want to be in a place where you're valued and appreciated, where you're adding value and adding that appreciation
Yeah,
voice. So thank you for sharing that.
absolutely.
On that cultural fit note, have you ever been on the other side of interviewing candidates?
Yes, I have
Yeah.
many times. Yes.
Could I probe a little further and ask you a memorable story or a conversation you had with an interviewee?
I'll tell you. Okay. One experience I remember I mean, it was a while back, and I'll tell you what, both of them weren't really great experiences. Uh, but like there was this time where a student came, like he was a grad, like an MBA grad, came down with full packaged portfolio to present, but he didn't really do his homework on what the role was all about, and he didn't research enough. So even though he kept on presenting paper after paper and said, I've written this and I've done these theses, and he's showcasing, it was pretty impressive, like research, but it really didn't fit well with the role that we were looking for. Neither did it fit well with the kind of person we were looking for, from the leadership skills that we were expecting. So I remember that, like, where he came out, I came out of that because I was doing an interview with another colleague of mine, and we came out of him like, wow, like this guy's is an MBA, he spent so much money, but he didn't research the role itself, right, and what the company stands for. And even though, like, if he had done some of that, it would definitely have helped him, because he had a really good technical profile, and he had a lot of projects and that he did in his school, that were impressive, but he didn't bridge the gap, you know. So that was definitely one experience, that I still remember. I was like, wow, like, is like students go in and they spend a lot of money, going through the career, spending on getting certifications, but they sometimes shortchange themselves by not investing enough time on their own leadership skills, on their own self, which really helps, like, eventually, in interviews.
Oh, I appreciate that so much because coming from an extracurricular background, I find that a lot of students find juggling and balancing different types of things at school kind of overwhelming at times. Just to hear it from someone who's been on the other side of the interview table, to know that it really matters to really connect those puzzle pieces together, just so awesome. So thank you for adding that little
Yeah.
piece. I'm going to pivot gears a little bit. I know that working with technology is known to be a highly collaborative role. This could probably speak to a little bit of the leadership skills you were talking about earlier. What are some tips you have for building rapport with colleagues in the office?
I think number one thing is trust. And I have learned throughout my career that, like, if you're not able to build trust, you'll never succeed. So I think building trust with your peers, building trust with your leaders, with your stakeholders, with your customers, like, is the number one thing that will help you succeed. And when I'm and I'm guessing you're going to say, okay, what do you mean by trust? So trust means, a number of different things. Trust means that, if you make a mistake, you accept responsibility. You are clear about, what led to it. Instead of putting blame on others, you accept your responsibility, right? And accepting responsibility at workplace is not a big deal. Like at big companies, it doesn't matter if you made a mistake or not. What matters is that you've learned from it, that you showcase that you have a backbone to accept it. um, Trust also means that you're transparent about the facts that you've gathered, right? A lot of times you will do your analysis, and you'll figure out, oh my, my goodness, like there's this data that goes really against the project that I'm proposing, and maybe you don't have a business case, right? So if you present that data and showcase that you are transparent, that also helps build trust. Like you never want to be able to be in a situation where you're not being transparent, you're sort of fudging the numbers, that kind of stuff. um, I think in a collaborative setting, the other thing about building trust is about empathy to your peers and your stakeholders, right? You need to understand why they might say no to you, why they're in that situation, right? Why they can't help you, right? Instead of you know creating a more like a frictionful engagement, you need to sort of bring that tone down and understand. And sometimes you have to disagree and commit and say, okay, even though we disagree, I'll still do it. So all of these things help build trust. And once you build that trust, maybe you won't get what you want initially, but in the long run, your peers will come to appreciate, they will trust you more, and they will go an extra mile to help you succeed in whatever you're trying to do. So I think number one thing is trust in this, sorry, excuse me, um, in a collaborative environment. You definitely need to have trust with colleagues, with teams that are not part of your organization, that need to do work for you, even that they may not report into you or may have no incentive to do the work for you. But if you have trust, build that trust with them, they'll go that extra mile for you.
I find that that speaks to emotional intelligence, a skill that a lot of folks are kind of bringing up in the media and different conversations when it comes to empathetic dialogue. Could I probe a little further? How did you build on your emotional intelligence skills, and like when you started out, how did you gain the trust of people in your
Yeah.
organization?
So I'll be honest, like I didn't build, like I didn't know about building trust from day one, right? I did learn the hard way too. Like, there were some bridges I burned because I wasn't empathetic enough. I didn't have enough of emotional intelligence, right? And so some of it does come from experience, but some of it does come from like learning from other people and others' experiences. So maybe reading a good book about emotional intelligence, or reading about how do you build trust, how do you build consensus, definitely helps, provides you those tips that you could take further. uh, but as I said, like in my journey, it's getting feedback from your peers was another way to understand, like where was I not where was I deficient in my skill set, for example. And I did hear from this way back when I had no idea, okay, I need to build trust with other teams. I was like, okay, I am building trust with my own team, that's good enough. But the point was, building trust with other teams was the key. So I learned it the hard way. I don't think other students who are fresh and are just starting their work need to do that. I mean, they can definitely learn from others and start looking at what are the things that they're doing that might be causing their trust to be eroded with their stakeholders.
I really value relationships, so I really like the fact that you brought that up, and the fact that building that relationship with other teams and having that cross collaboration being so helpful in your career journey. It's really eye opening. So thank you for sharing that. Just kind of based on trust and having, I guess, that sense of agreement and collaboration with other teams. How do you work when someone doesn't agree with your idea? How do you maintain that trust when it's going kind of the opposite way from what you
Yeah,
would
great
envision?
question. Yeah, this is a great question. So I think the first thing to understand is why somebody disagreeing with you, right? A lot of times we think that like our point of view is the right point of view, our plans are the best plans, like our solution is the right solution that we should go ahead with, right? And uh, and I think this causes disagreement, and this causes, if you're stuck on it, then this is where your trust will start to erode. So the way to get around disagreements is definitely to understand why someone is disagreeing with you, right? First, to understand their perspective. Second is, as I said, about transparency, is that you need to be transparent. Like, we need to be transparent with what we are doing, get data, get anecdotes on both opinions, like whether it's your solution, your plan, and you ask the same thing from your peers who you have the disagreement with, is like, let's put down, let's figure out what is the data telling us, right? What are our customers telling us? What is the anecdotes telling us, right? um, and once you have that, I mean, I'm pretty sure that once you have data in front of you, it will help you and the person you are in a disagreement with, bridge that a little bit. Now, that might not help all the time, but sometimes it could happen that you may have to help the other person to help you, right? Um, and That's another way to get around disagreements, is sometimes somebody may not be able to help you with what you want from them, right? That's what the disagreement is. They can't help you. But sometimes they can't help you because they need help as well with something, right? At work, like, they could be like, they may not have the time to do it. They may not have the resources. They may not have the information available. Whatever the thing is, you may, so that just boils down to, like, how can you help the other person to help you, basically. And sometimes you have to find the middle ground. And then once you do all of this, you'll build trust, and in the long run, this will help you. So it's not like, black and white, cut and dry, that you got to do this, and this will help. I think it's a bunch of different things, and different techniques that you'll have to employ, that helps you get around disagreement. But I think number one is you understand, you learn why somebody's disagreeing with you, and you go from there.
It kind of keeps coming back to that idea of empathy and perspective, and having that ability to portray yourself in the other person's shoes, and then I
Yeah.
guess see it from a different set of eyes.
Yeah,
And also
absolutely.
that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of metaphor.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's how it is at in any enterprise. Like, I've worked in small enterprise companies. I've worked in Fortune 500. This is how it works. Like, you gotta build your relationships. You gotta have trust. You gotta agree to disagree, right? And you gotta understand, like, why someone's disagreeing. Like, you have to be respectful in that, right? Because sometimes, both parties are correct, right? It's not that one is wrong and one is right. Like, both of us could be correct in our own way, and if there's just the situation is such that the other person cannot help us. So sometimes we have to go that extra mile and help them, and say, okay, I'll help you, help me, right? And then you find that middle ground. So it's a bit of negotiations. How do you build consensus? And but yeah, emotional intelligence, again, is a key part of this.
Negotiation is another thing to add to the toolkit for our listeners listening. For another thing I'd like to ask is, what's your biggest failure and what have you learned with it throughout your career?
um, my biggest failure, I would say, is not being entrepreneurial enough early on in my career. I think I was very focused on certain roles, and I did not think. It's not about that I didn't think. I think the what I've learned is that ideas are dime a dozen, right? When you come up, like, everybody can come up with any idea, but the main thing is the execution part of it, like getting to the finish line. And coming up with ideas is not enough, right? I mean, you cannot take credit. Okay, it was my idea. Like, so what? Like, everybody is thinking of ideas every second. So what I've learned is, like, getting to the finish line is equally as important as thinking about a good idea. Does that help? Does
That
that
does
answer
help.
your question?
It
So
does. So, can I probe a little further? Has there been like an entrepreneurial endeavor that you wished you started earlier, or where did this quote unquote
yeah,
failure come from?
I'll tell you, my first entrepreneurial endeavor was back in 1999, and the e-com was just like it wasn't there, like like it was just starting, like internet was just starting in. So this is when I was in Pakistan, and I started building an e-commerce site with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and I think we took it as a as a part-time, project, a fun project, but we never finished completing it, right? And we left it off, and because we didn't believe that maybe e-commerce would be so big, right? And we left off, right? And that was like my first failure, that I didn't finish what I started. um, and then when I came to Canada, like after I graduated and everything, I mean, there were a couple of ideas I was working on, but again, I never finished those ideas. Like I got into like mobile apps, and at that time it was at BlackBerry, and BlackBerry was booming, and I started building a BlackBerry app. Again, never really finished, like getting through the finish line, like, and then just left off. And a few moments did come up, and that's my failure. Like I just didn't take it seriously, and I didn't take it to the execution. So I think those were like definitely some of the moments I think about, and like, okay, like why execution is so important in life is like planning and ideation is great, but we can't lose focus on the execution part. You gotta be focused on how do you finish what you start, right? Because it's that's what makes and breaks it, right? So that's my 2 cents on your answer, your question. Sorry.
No, that's a great answer, and I do have a follow up to that. So,
Yeah.
if you stopped those projects in the middle, was there something that stopped you? Like, what were your roadblocks? And if someone else was facing some kind of roadblocks on a personal passion project or something along the lines
Yeah.
of entrepreneurial endeavor, how can they go around or curve around it? Where do they find that mentorship and guidance to make it to the finish line?
I think you almost answered my question. So I think I lacked a mentor at that time. I didn't have a good mentor who I could go to, and bounce my ideas off them, and take guidance, and because when you're like early on, I mean, now there's so many different resources that definitely you can go to, and there's YouTube and all the stuff, but having a mentor is, I think, extremely important. And you can have multiple mentors, or even having a friend who you can go to bounce ideas off, to talk about what you're trying to do, helps a lot. But I would definitely say for students who want to start, get into entrepreneurship, that they should definitely get a good mentor, somebody who's done startups, somebody who's been there, done that, that can then guide you through this. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I do know that U of T has a few entrepreneurship hubs. So for folks listening, there are mentors available if you wanted to do
Yeah.
something like that. I'm just going to pivot gears a little bit. How do you go about problem solving?
Um, Great question. It's an interview question as well, by the way, at Amazon. We don't ask it directly, but we do give problems to solve to candidates. So I think number one thing, for me when I'm trying to solve a problem, is um, understanding the problem itself. Like it's important to understand, like dive deep on what is the problem, and what's the impact that this problem is having on whoever this problem is for. So understanding the impact and the severity and the urgency really helps, is the first step, because you want to be able to decide, like, is this a problem you want to solve, or now or later, or is it even a problem to solve at all? Like some problems are good to have, right? You can just keep them lingering around, like, because they're just not worth the solve. So the first thing is figuring out, like, is it an important problem to solve or not, right? The next thing is collecting data about that problem itself, right? And once you start collecting the data, it will automatically open up um, doors for you to solve it, because you will better understand what the problem itself is, right? So I think these are the few things that if somebody does like follow as a technique or a framework, they'll get a long way in solving the problem itself, because there's different ways on how you solve problems, right? But this initial sort of pre-work to problems is something that will really help students in you know.
When you
Yeah,
say collecting the data, do you mean finding examples of how the problem was solved before in the past? Could you expand a
sure.
little bit more on that?
Yeah, so when I say collect data, it could be examples of the examples of the problems, like how many times has this problems occurred, who has this problem occurred with, how many times, frequency, what what were the things that it resulted in, for example, right? What were the inputs into this problem? For example, I don't know. For example, let's say car crash, right? If it's a car crash problem you're trying to solve or making it more safer, you want to know, what kind of tires were on the car, right? How old were the tires, right? What was the rating of the tires, right? How long, what kind of conditions were there on the road when the crash happened, and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of data that I'm trying to get to it, is that once you start collecting data around these, a problem itself, it will really help you, sort of build a framework that you can then use to solve any given problem.
I guess data analysis is something to add to our toolkit
100%.
as we transition post-grad.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there's any role that exists in the technical space that doesn't involve data, right? And with all these data, all companies and products collecting data, this is, data is just available to you if you know where to look and who to ask, right? So it's really important to learn how to write SQL queries, or be able to use Excels, be able to pivot data. Like, there's these little things in Excel that'll help you really manage your data. But I think learning some basic query SQLs will help, at least the information systems students with their.
This segues perfectly into my next question. How do you stay up to date on new trends in your industry? So if someone's trying to learn all these data gadgets and tools, how do they stay up to date on what's going on?
I mean, there's so many sites now, right? I mean, to be honest, like I look at The Verge, there's TechCrunch, there's LinkedIn. um I mean, I mean, it's the internet is full of resources, and I would say use the UFT resources if you have. If you are already working in a company, use their learning resources. Usually they have a lot of resources for their employees. um, I would say that. I mean, because you don't want to get overwhelmed either, but just keep it at a manageable level. But I think there are a few sites you can bookmark, and just, in the morning, have a habit of like spending like 15 minutes just going through, okay, what's going on in the industry. And that should be good enough. And if you want to go into, like, if you want to go deep, then you just pick a topic and then go deep on it. But I think those are some of the ways you could keep yourself up to date.
I'm really happy you mentioned LinkedIn because I know through our U of T tuition, we get access to LinkedIn Learning, and there's definitely invaluable learnings that you can get on your own. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of your favorite projects, and could you describe key skills you found useful for them?
Um, my favorite projects, to be honest, are all outside of my work. They begin in my garden and they end in my garden. So I love gardening. So all of my projects that I love are gardening projects. But I think I would like to say that there's this idiom that curiosity killed the cat. I think it just made it smarter. It's a wrong idiom. I think it fits perfectly for somebody who wants to invest time on themselves, is learn uh, things that you don't know. Dive deep into things that are of interest to you. Once you start learning more about those things, they'll make it interesting to you, and you love what you're doing. But you got to know your stuff. Like, you can't go camping without reading up about how to camp, right? How to put up a tent. And you'll be miserable if you go there and it rains and you didn't prepare yourself, right? Because you didn't learn how to do those XYZ things, right? So it's just like that. It's like whenever you pick up a project, you got to learn what it's about, what does it need to be successful in, and be prepared. I think that would be my advice to students is do that, and you'll love what you're doing.
If I could add a piece to that, when you spoke about gardening, that kind of resonated with me because for me, that's kind of like Zumba or bicycling. Like, it isn't necessarily my UX work that makes me really passionate, it's outside of the classroom. And
Yeah.
I think it's really important to have balance in your day to day life, if you would agree. And I don't think a lot of students learn that throughout university because we're told to kind of go for those grades and for sleep deprivation to be some kind of badge of honor. So the fact that you're just talking about gardening and it being something that you're really passionate about and that you enjoy and it's useful outside of your working environment, I think that's really, I don't know what's the right word here, but resonatable or
Yeah.
connectable with another person.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Look, and then my advice to students would be that, perhaps, like, and I'll give my example, maybe I'm right or wrong. Like, look, when I graduated from York, my goal was I need to like have like a 4.0 GPA, right? I want to get like A plus, be on the dean's list, and sort of I was. Um, like, and so I did everything, right? Yeah. And then I got into the master's program. I really worked, but I was also working at that time. But I was working full time, and there were some sleepless nights at work, like because those were my initial days of learning, and I was just getting into figuring out like how to, like I was learning how to be in a professional workspace, right? So it's okay in the beginning, right, to go that extra mile, to have some sleepless nights, right? That's part of the learning, right? But eventually, like, you can't let it get over you, right? You gotta have that work life balance. You gotta be able, you learn to say no, right? And sometimes I see people, they don't say no, right? And that's where the problem is. Like, you gotta be able to say no at times and know when to stop, right? And then go back home and completely shut off from your computer, from your emails and everything, and then do whatever you love doing, whether it's Zumba, whether it's cycling, or whatever it is, right? You got to be able to do that. I learned this after uh, I think I started at Walmart, right? Walmart really helped me understand that, okay, I mean, and it's sort of and people might disagree, but that's like, at Walmart is where I started like understanding that I needed to have a work life balance, right? And my colleagues and our managers really helped me with that as well. So, but it also has to come from you as well. Like, you got to take the first step, and you got to talk to your managers, say, look, this is where my line is, right? I need this. I can't be working weekends. I can't be working like 10 p.m. Like, yes, there will be times where you have to deliver project, and there might be a week, in every like 3-4 months where you're doing this kind of work. And I've done that many times, but you need to know when to stop, though. You need to know when to say no and have that work life balance.
Awesome. I love that piece of advice, and I'm going to take it on to my future career. So thanks so much for sharing that. If I just kind of pivot into another question, what is one myth about your industry that you'd like to debunk?
uh so when you say industry, do you mean like the functional role I'm in, or do you mean to say the industry is in the retail industry, or which dimension is this full question about?
It would be more towards students who are coming from an information science background. So if you're working more towards the technology sector,
Okay,
um,
sure.
yeah.
So I feel a lot of times, and this is my opinion, my perspective, my 2 cents. Okay, so I'll probably be wrong about it, but um, my 2 cents is that a lot of times there's a lot of focus on certifications and diplomas and MBAs, and degrees, and uh, and students think that by having a diploma or a degree is the ticket to their role, like their ideal job or role. I think that's something that's very untrue, right? It is one of the things that lets an employer or an interviewer look at and say, okay, yes, at least he's got at least got an MBA, so I know that he's trained, right? Okay, this guy has a certification in this. This guy has a master's. Okay, I can see that he's been through some training, right? But that is not enough, though. Like you need to build on your leadership skills, like we talked about. Trust. You got to be able to think big. You got to be able to dive deep. You got to have good communication skills. You got to be able to do XYZ soft skills that that particular role needs. And students sometimes miss that part, and their focus is very much on the technical aspect, that okay, I just need to do this and this, and then I'll qualify. Like, yeah, you'll qualify, but there are 10 other candidates who also qualify, but also have these other experiences that they can share in interviews or have it on their resume. So I think that's a big. I mean, I don't know if it's a myth that I would like to debunk, but it's an advice to students that just don't get carried away by that certification, right? You need to look at it more broadly on what role you want to go in with. What are those leadership skills, those soft skills, those experiences that you need to have that will help you um, be successful in that role, right? Because you don't want to be in a role where you're not successful either. Like, even if you got the job and if you're not doing well, then you'll be unhappy and then you'll regret. So that's sort of my advice slash debunk, whatever you want to call it.
I feel like that's such a great piece of advice because almost all students, I think, try to build a standard resume or want to know how they can make their resume stand out. Can I probe a little further? Do you have any reflections or memories about a resume you saw that kind of stood out? And what was it that spoke to those soft skills that you saw?
Yeah. I think from a resume perspective, it's important that um, one highlights their achievements. Sometimes I look at resumes and they're written very oddly. Like, it looks like they're just doing a checkbox. Okay, I've got this skill, this skill, this skill, this skill. Like, as an interviewer, I don't care about those checkboxes. I care about what did you actually do. Like, what was your experience? You need to talk about that experience in your resume, that you were able to, I don't know, you were able to um, help. Um, just your experience itself, that just give me 1 second, there's something popping up on my screen from my work. But an example that includes some actual achievements with data points, right? So that you can say that, okay, I help convert X many customers into loyal customers, or I helped drove this complicated task to finish in a time that was required, or whatever. So when I'm looking at it, I'm trying to see what did you actually achieve and how did you achieve it, right? That's how you want to sort of come out in your resume, versus just putting a one-liner checkbox saying I've got negotiation skills. Like, I don't care, like, if you have, like, if you say you've got negotiation skills, I want to see what did you do to how did you use your negotiation skills, and what was the outcome of that, right? So those are the things that you want to probably put on your resume and even talk about in your interviews. And I think that's sort of my advice on the resume front.
So not just having a line, but having an outcome associated with that line, right? Okay. Now, how do you hope your career will grow in the next 5 to 10 years? Talking about so many students starting out their careers, where are you headed?
Yeah. Look, for me, a couple of things are very important. Work-life balance is really important. It's really important, what I love, like, that I need to love what I'm doing. So right now, that's sort of why I'm in this product manager role. Is it's something that I enjoy doing. So I think in the next 5 years, I don't know about 10 years, but I think the next 5 years, I think my focus is going to be a little bit or more on the leadership side to figure out how do I become a better leader. Um, and there's so much to learn along that path. So I think that's sort of where I'm headed is to all a little bit deeper into what are those skills that I need to become a better leader.
Awesome. And what would be the advice you would be giving to someone who's thinking about a similar career path to yours?
I think my first thing would be that they should get a mentor in this field. Product management is not a very well understood field unless you're actually working as a product manager. There's a lot of myths about what or what product management is about. People confuse it with program management, with project management, with business analysis, and it's a lot more than just these titles. So I would suggest that pick up a book, get some sort of a book that talks about. Go on YouTube, learn about what product managers is talking about, um, and learn what this field is about, and get a mentor who's a product manager, and they'll be able to help you with the skills that you need to come into this role. Um, there's a lot to be said, so I wouldn't do justice if I answered, but I think if you get a good mentor, start there and they'll help you with it.
And I think you just read my mind or read my questions. What are some recommended books, podcasts, or pages that you would say helped you along the way?
um there are a couple of books. Like, to be honest, I haven't read a whole lot of books. I don't I mean I like reading smaller articles, but I have read a couple of books that are really good. I think Inspired is one, and I can share that link with you later on. It's on Amazon. It's about how do you build products that customers love. Another one is Don't Make Me Think. That was a really good book. More on, I don't know if you read about it. It's all about UX. Like, how do you design products for customers that so you design a UI that people don't have to think about before using it. So I felt that was pretty good. Um, so these are a couple of books that, I mean, Inspired is definitely a good one. Uh, but as I said, like, these books will give you like very theoretical, like, if you don't have an experience, you won't be able to relate to these books. That's the only caveat, right? Because um, at face value you'll be like, oh yeah, that's great, you can just do it, this is so simple. But in reality you'll be like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, I can totally relate to this problem and why we can do this because of the situation I'm in. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the books, but I would say go beyond those books. Go on YouTube. There's lots of material on product management. Get a mentor, and even at your workplace, I would say once you actually know what some of these skills that are required to be a product manager, try to use those at your workplace, even if you're not in a product manager role. Like, there's definitely certain things you can use to build your skills as a good product manager. Um, yeah.
Okay, and how would you describe the opportunities for growth in your career? Is it more vertical or horizontal?
I would say there's a lot of horizontal opportunities for sure. There a lot of horizontal, like, companies are hiring a lot of product managers because they understand that there's a gap between technology and strategy, right? Um, so definitely a lot of horizontal, but also vertical. It takes time, um, but it's just like any other role. There's multiple opportunities you can go off to. So at the end of the day, you gotta you need to enjoy what you're doing, right? And you can hop off to different things from there.
And is there something you know now about your career that you wish you knew earlier?
Um, about my career, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. Like, that's not something that I like. I mean, what's happened in the past has happened. You gotta look forward, right? Is what's next.
Something I like to kind of pivot this question to ask is if you could have a conversation with yourself on your first day entering the MI program at the school, what would you say to yourself back then?
Um, like I think I was very excited when I joined the MIS program, definitely, and um, I I really wanted to like come out of this program um, with the skills to be like not just like be a good like information scientist, but also on the entrepreneur side. Like I really wanted to use it to benefit. Like at that point, I was more thinking about health sciences and health technology, and I really wanted to get into that field. Um, so I really wanted to come up with something that would benefit the community and see how I could use my skills in the tech sector. So yeah, I mean, I was pretty excited. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, from what I'm getting out of it is kind of stay excited is what you're telling your past self. Like get excited to learn and make the most out of the program is from what I'm understanding. Is there anything else you would want to add?
Yeah, I would say stay excited, build friendships, relationships, learn from like there was such a diversity of students at the information school that learn from their experiences, learn from them, learn from their perspectives, right? This is an opportunity to open your mind up, right? Because I don't know from where each student is coming from. They're probably coming in with a preset mindset, like, okay, this is what I think the program is about. But the program is about a lot of other things. Like it's not just like if somebody's coming into an information science program, it's not just about technology, it's about policy, it's about you know privacy, like it's so many things, right? It's about like so keep that mind open, right? And learn from your peers.
And just kind of building on that idea of relationships, who are three people who have been most inspirational in your career journey and why?
um three people I know. Um Yeah, I would say I definitely had a mentor when I started. His name is Sadiq Ali. He was a PhD student at U of T, and I actually was an intern at his startup when I started, and he was an entrepreneur at that time. So I was really looking up to him, and he was my mentor for the longest time. So I really looked up to him. And my I mean inspiration wise, obviously my father was one, because he had graduated from UFT as well way back, I don't know when. So I wanted to graduate from UFT as well. That was, I think, one of my other reasons. um, and and I think my aunt has been, or like my aunt in Canada was an inspiration as well for me, um, who was here when I came here. So I mean, I've had a lot of people who've been my inspiration, but just three that I could think of.
I'm sure your dad is really proud of you following those footsteps of becoming another MI and U of T grad. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, unfortunately, he passed away just before I came here, but he at least so this was like back in 2001 when I was coming in Canada. So he didn't get to see me, but you know, for me it was an honor that I was able to get into U of T, just like he did.
Yeah, I feel like the people who may not be still on the earth, they're still watching us from different places. If you believe in the soul and the spirit, I'm sure he's watching you and cheering you on from wherever he is now. So congrats on that.
Hmm. Thank you.
Um, Now we're just kind of going to end with a fun rapid fire session. I'm
Okay.
going to give you a few prompts. This is my
Okay.
favorite part, so I hope you're excited and ready for this.
All right.
Um,
Let's do it.
After the few prompts, you can just say the few things that come to mind. It could be one sentence or a word. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sounds good. So learning is?
Learning is useless without application.
Innovation is?
Simplifying for your customers.
And success is?
Is not everything.
What about failure?
It's the first step to success.
And what is something people often get wrong about you?
My age.
What is one piece of advice that's so awful you need to warn us against it?
I think I spoke about it. It's the whole certifications. Beware of diplomas and certification by itself. Like, it's not enough.
Right. And what is one thing you're really excited about?
Starting gardening. It's coming up. The season's starting soon.
Oh yes, I can feel the sunshine and the rain.
Yeah, I can't wait for the weather to get better. Awful right now for my garden.
So what's one thing you're most grateful for?
I think everything.
And if you could describe yourself in one word, what would it be?
Very predictable.
And what is a song you can't live without?
I don't think there's any.
Okay. And what's the last book you read?
I think it was The Inspired.
Inspired? All right. And how do you manage stress?
By not thinking about things that I cannot control.
And what is worth the risk?
Your loved ones.
Awesome. So that wraps up our session here today. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and your insights. I'm sure many students, including myself, will find real value in the knowledge that you shared here today. We're so grateful for your time, and maybe you'll be back one day again too. So thanks so much for coming out today and sharing your story.
Yeah, no worries. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for having me at the podcast.
Take care, Ahmed. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.